news this week came out as well in the last few days. Plans to redevelop St James's Park or move the stadium. Numbers have been bounded of 800 million, a billion. Ryan, would you be unhappy if Newcastle decided to build the Aramco mega 70,000 seat stadium? Spurs stadium's a crock of crap now because ours are so nice, new and shiny, just behind St James's? Or would you prefer to try and do their best with St James's where it is now?
It's a tough one, isn't it? I mean, it's the whole idea of being in the city centre, right? I think it would definitely soften the blow for a lot of people if it was built right behind St James's Park. Whether it can be done, I'm intrigued to see. It's never quite that easy, is it? There's obviously loads of ideas floating about, like pushing the pitch back or moving the pitch in a different direction and whatever. I think I do understand the need for people. Well, they feel, the need to progress. In order to progress, we need to move to a new stadium. There is things that a new stadium would bring and open up opportunities commercially. Being able to do things like the NFL, like Tottenham Hotspur do, which is probably a good money earner, and some of the concerts you could bring outside of football. But there is a few things that I'm still a little bit hesitant on in terms of, are we going to be, as fans, the ones that are going to then be repaying back the cost of the stadium through, increased ticket prices, season tickets jumping up in price. And I want to make sure, I hope it doesn't get to a point where just because we've got this new stadium, it doesn't become a super commercialized bowl of an arena, and St James's Park has that history and that atmosphere and that tradition. Whereas, if it could be expanded, it would be nice to see. But then also at the same time, if you're spending 800 million just to add 10,000 seats to St James's Park, you might as well go and build a new stadium anyway. But I just think, the main thing for me, like I said, I don't necessarily think it's about capacity and all that sort of stuff. I just hope that the club remembers the core fan base and make sure they don't lose touch with that core fan base by, overpricing things, commercializing things too heavily.
Yep.
To the point where it no longer becomes an enjoyable match day experience or an inaffordable match day experience for your average fan, because football's already too expensive as it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised. I mean, because Saudis don't seem like they're too precious with their money. It's more about the image. So I'd be very surprised if it was like all of a sudden, $2,000 for a season ticket or...
No, but I think it's more tied into that, again, which we'll talk about, no doubt, but PSR and all this sort of stuff, right? How much money can you squeeze out of revenue in terms of ticket prices? That can generate an extra 2, 3, 4 million a year, maybe. But anyway, sorry for interrupting, but yeah, you get what I mean.
Oh, you will be. With moving to because I'm not local, obviously I love St James's Park, but if it's right behind, the issue that I have with any new stadium is they seem to lose that we're over the top of you and this is a horrible place to play. Like Tottenham Stadium's lovely. It looks amazing, but the fans are like nice, spaced out. They're not anywhere near the pitch. West Ham's is the worst stadium in the league. That wasn't a purpose-built one for football. But do you think if they were to build a stadium on Leazes Park, for example, that they would keep in mind what makes St James's Park such a special place and why the Newcastle fans are feared by opposition by coming up here to play?
I like to think so. I think a couple of things that we can say about the club since the takeover has been, for them by and large, they have done a number of things to try and make the experience for fans better.
Yep.
Whether or not they've always come off is an entirely different topic, but they have made moves to try and make the match day experience better for the match going fan. There's obviously a financial opportunity there. To not just to move, but to improve the offering that's in the stadium. But one of the most important aspects commercially for a stadium, for any sports team, regardless of the sport that you're in, it's called spend per visit. Effectively, it is how much the average fan, the average match-going fan or attendee, will spend in a visit at a stadium. That's why you see at Spurs, the average fan spends, I think it's well over £100 per visit on average. Obviously that includes, some of the high price seats, and there'll be corporate visitors who will also spend money. But a big part of it is the concessions and the concourse at that ground is such that you can stay in there. You get your food, you get drinks. Like you say, it comes in quickly. You can get access to Wi-Fi. There's on-site facilities to spend money. And I think that's a big aspect of driving commercial income. Another part of it, obviously, would be how it affects ticket prices. And I think a big part of it, obviously, like Ryan, you mentioned, is whether or not we as fans would be asked to pay the difference. I go relatively regularly with my dad to St James's to watch home games when we can get tickets, and oftentimes, like obviously we know the demand is there because obviously they're talking about replacing the stadium, and we see the queue every time you book tickets. There's 60,000 people waiting for the general sale pretty much every time that goes on. So the tickets go on sale. We pay my dad and I. We pay Platinum Club tickets because they sell out slower, and you still get a good view, but they're a little bit more expensive. And I think the problem obviously is that if we get a giant shiny new stadium that costs a couple £1 billion, is that then going to result in season tickets that are £2,000 a year? Right? And are we going to end up price gouging the fans and whatnot? Are you going to end up effectively paying Arsenal prices or Spurs prices or Chelsea prices for your tickets? That's obviously what you don't want. And obviously there will be regional pricing based on the average income here is a lot lower than it is in, say, in London, or the average income in central Manchester and stuff like that. So there will be some regional pricing there. But I think ultimately, outside of the commercial aspects, I'm all for moving stadium if it is in Lees Park behind St James's. St James's we so desperately need better facilities.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff there, not just for fans, but also for the groundsman and for the team itself. They need better facilities. They need better technology in the ground so that they can better make use of everything that is available to football teams. One of the biggest things for me is, like we say, what matters is the seating. If we want to use a new stadium for multiple venue activities like concerts or conventions or NFL games, for example, there will likely that would probably necessitate a more spread out shape.
No.
Which I agree. I don't like the idea that I would rather sacrifice some events and have a much more football-oriented space. I've mentioned it outside of the episodes in the past. We were talking about this recently in our group chat, right? I give me the Westfalen Stadion on time. Give me the Dortmund Stadium. Give me like the Südtribüne in their stadium. It's the biggest single stand in Europe. 25,000 people. Imagine the Gallagher with 25,000 people with giant tifos and all that, loads of flags flying throughout the game. It would be absolutely brilliant. Or you look at like the Bernabeu, the new Bernabeu. They've got, despite all the events they've got going on there, they've still got basically vertical seating.
Yep.
Like, it's so high. And it's so close to the pitch as well. Sometimes it feels. I think that's the main thing. Is that you need to feel like you're close to the pitch. You need to, if you're as home fans, we would want the opposing team to feel sort of claustrophobic. You want the noise to be oppressive. You want the space to be oppressive for opposing teams. Whether or not the PIF want to spend several £billion and get some really fancy futuristic set of stands that can sort of spread out when it gets like a larger footprint in a ground, or some sci-fi nonsense like that. I've used an example with you guys in our group chat before. In the NFL and MLS in Seattle, they have I think it's called Lumen Field now is the name of the stadium. The stadium there is designed to enhance acoustics.
Yeah.
So it's designed to make the stadium noise louder. That's another thing I'm really keen on. I want St James's, or whatever the new stadium would be, to just be loud. I want it to be by design a fortress that you have to visit if you're an opposing team, and then keep everything else secondary, like the piecemeal pitch that can come apart and sink down into the ground to make way for an NFL pitch, and all the other facilities for like concerts and stuff that can come second.
Yeah, I think when people, I mentioned it to my mum and dad, and they're from the area, and when Sue said, "Oh, mum, we might be moving," no, we can't move, and I think a lot of fans it's heart overhead, and I get it. It's the cathedral on the hill.
I was just about to say that, actually, to summarise mine. It is heart says no and my head says yes. I mean, yes, in the sense that
I just think
commercially it makes sense. And I think it's a place that's so iconic. I
think it's a bit harsh there, but I think it's a bit arrogant for people to say that we can't leave, because there are bigger teams and more successful teams than us that have moved. Arsenal's the most recent example I can think of a big team moving. I mean, Spurs, but Spurs. But Arsenal leaving Highbury to then go to the Emirates, and it's been pretty much a success. They're completely different stadiums, but the examples you gave there, Steve, the Bernabeu gives me hope that they can, because I've been right at the top of the Milburn stand, like sat touching the back wall and you still feel fairly close to. We can still see clearly what is going on the pitch, and you're part of the atmosphere. And they do need to keep that. I personally cannot see them staying at St James's. I really, really can't.
Because it does feel like the language of what they've been saying as a club, right? It just suggests that they're laying the groundwork to announce that they're going to move. Saying things like, "Oh well, if we're going to spend £1 billion revamping or several hundred million revamping St James's, is that the most sustainable option? We're looking at everything." And then you look at the recent appointment by the club on the board of I'm just trying to find his name quickly. Roger Thornton, the real estate investor who's local to. He operates in Newcastle and deals with large scale property developments. Everything just seems to be screaming, "We're moving stadium." One thing we'll look at is we know that Darren Eales is leaving the club whenever they find a successor for him. I think one of the defining things that will be his legacy, basically, will be ensuring that we stay in the city centre. I can't see us moving. I think that given the reports, there've been reports in the past, in the last few months, of the Saudis sort of reaching out to the northeast councils to sort of investigate into, should we can we fund anything? Can we invest here? I think there's enough local relationships and enough money involved that it would be ludicrous for the city council to be like, no, even if you promise to change it back to the St James's Park footprint into a large green area, no, we don't want several £billion invested in the region, because we have to remember that this feasibility study is not just the stadium. It will be a huge training campus as well. You expect something on the scale of the Etihad campus that City have. Hundreds of millions of pounds just in a training facility and a secondary stadium for the youth and the women's team. Like, there's so much money involved that you can't see it not happening. The money's there. The political will, I think, is there to just make it happen.